G'day gamers, Ranger Tony here with another SOLASTA Crown of the Magister build video. So, a little while ago I created the second best Archery Ranger build video for SOLASTA Early Access. I'm here today to give you the updated best Archery Ranger build for SOLASTA. Again, this is based on the early access content of the game. Some of this information may change later on, but as of early access, this is the best Archery Ranger build that you can do. Let's have a look. Now, I said when I made the first video that there was going to be one change that you could make to make this the best Ranger build. It's now got to about 3 or 4 changes, but I will point them all out and look at the advantages of each one of those changes, as well as going through all of the things about the build that I think are important. So, the second best Ranger build was based off a Sylvan Elf who had a dexterity of +2, Ancestry, which gives them an advantage for charm and immunity to sleep, Darkvision, allowing them to see in dim or complete darkness or natural darkness, keen senses, which gave them proficiency in perception, and they have 4 hours worth of meditation are sufficient for rest. They have 7 meter movement. They have wisdom +1. The proficiency with longsword, short bow, and longbow doesn't really help with the Ranger build because you get access to those already. Your Sylvan adaptability, giving you proficiency in survival and athletics and advantage on survival when hunting, is nice, but, and your languages. So the first change, and the main change, this is the main change that I envisaged originally, was to actually go with a Marsh Halfling. Now, there are disadvantages to this, the first one being that you only have 5 meter movement rather than 7 or 5 squares, whatever. So that is a minor disadvantage. You get the same +2 to dexterity. You, rather than the elvish protection against sleep and charm and stuff like that, you get brave, which gives you an advantage on save throws against being frightened. You also get lucky, and that's the main reason I took this, right? Is that getting the ability to re-roll an attack roll if you roll a 1 puts you ahead of a Sylvan Elf. I don't see it being used all that often. I was doing a stream of Baldur's Gate 3 last night and found that my characters were doing critical misses all over the place, which a critical miss is a roll of a 1, in case you didn't know. But I didn't see it happening a lot in SOLASTA, so I don't know whether there's something just that was an unlucky night or what. But I feel that this ability to be able to re-roll on attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws makes you just that little bit better than a standard Ranger. You also have Halfling Nimbleness, allowing you to move through any space of any that creature larger than you is occupying. And as a Marsh Halfling, you get a +1 to Constitution, which is nice to get your health a little bit higher. You get your hit points a little bit higher. And you're basically getting the Ranger's natural Explorer ability in swamp terrain for free. Okay? It's not quite what it says here, but that's what it equates to in this build. And you're getting Darkvision, same as the Sylvan Elf. So, some minor changes there, but overall I think it's going to work really well. We are, of course, going to pick the Ranger. Going through that briefly, you get saving throw proficiencies for strength and dexterity. You get light, medium armor, and shields. Now, we're not going to use a shield, and we're probably not going to use medium armor. Your dexterity is going to be high enough that you're going to get more bonuses based on light armor than you would with medium armor, and light armor will allow you to do stealth better. Okay? You can use simple and martial weapons. you're going to use simple weapons most of the time, except for your bow. You can choose any of the 3 skills from animal handling, athletics, insight, investigation, nature, perception, survival, and stealth. Then the big ones. You can choose a favored enemy, which gives you additional damage equal to your knowledge level of that creature. So I'll explain that a little bit better. As you go through the game, every time you kill an enemy of a particular type, kobold or goblin or skeleton, zombie, ghoul, what have you, you learn a little bit more about that type of creature. And so you can get between 1 and 4 points of knowledge. Every one of those points is a bonus to damage. So once you have 1 point of knowledge, then you get an extra 1 point of damage every time you attack that type of creature, if that creature is your favorite enemy. Okay? Now, meta gaming the SOLASTA Crown of the Magister early access content, the best option here is Undead. It would be good if you could pick something that covered the Sorak in the game, but it's unclear which ones of these the Sorak is. There is no lizard people mentioned. There should be humanoid in the list, but it's not there. And the humanoid would probably cover the Sorak. It would probably also do things like, there are some elves that you fight. There are some, dark apprentices, and all these. They would all become. They would all be under humanoids, but for some reason, humanoid is missing from the list. So there is late game in the early access content. There are some undead that you need to fight. So I feel that's the best option because, quite frankly, of every other thing that you fight in the game, maybe there's a couple of beasts in there, and that's pretty well it out of the list. Everything else would probably fall under humanoid. So I'm going to recommend taking Undead. That's another change from the original build. Now, I would normally say Swamp is probably not a bad idea for the Natural Explorer, but as a Marsh Halfling, you essentially already have it because it's no longer in this list. So my recommendation is to take Mountain, because there is some mountainous terrain, I believe, in the game, but it's actually a little hard to tell what the terrain is that you're traveling through most of the time. So take that with a grain of salt, but that's what I would recommend. Editing the equipment, I recommend sticking with the leather armor, and then everything else is perfectly fine. You definitely want the longbow over the shortbow because it does more damage. You could, once you find a crossbow, go to that, but I believe you're going to have problems once you get to level 5 and you get an extra attack. You're not going to be able to use that crossbow without a feat that enables that. So stick with that. And we shall move on. Now, backgrounds. I've had a look at all of these, and each of the backgrounds does actually give you some little things. Like the academic, for example, you get 2 extra languages, you get proficiency with a certain number of skills, you get this one gives you some ties to the antiquarian, so your relationship status is better with them, and you get a manacle and rosary so that you can chant things. No use to us. This one gives you Herbalism Kit. Aristocratic really just gives you extra languages and some equipment that you can sell to begin with, etc., etc. The one that I think works the best all round for a ranger is actually Philosopher. It's a toss-up between Acolyte and Philosopher. But Philosopher gives you proficiency in medicine and persuasion. And persuasion is nice to have. And then you also are proficient with the Herbalism Kit. Now this, combined with your ranger spells, where you can get Cure Light Wounds, allows you to create healing potions. And you're going to get 2 additional languages. And you're going to get a Herbalism Kit, you're going to get some extra gold pieces. That's all going to work out really well. So I'm going to recommend the Philosopher. That's the other change. Last time I was recommending Sellsword or Low Life as the ones to go with. I think I went with Low Life. Again, choosing the alignment is entirely up to you. I like to go with Lawful. And then we have to pick some personality flags. I'm going to go Lawful Kindness, and then I'm going to go Kindness and Altruism. Now, dice rolls. Unlike the previous one, I'm going to give you basic guidelines. Well, no, I did do this in the other video as well, but I'm going to give you basic guidelines here. My recommendation is that you're going to, you really want none of your abilities below 10, because that's just going to give you penalties that you just don't want, all right? So strength of 10 is what I recommend. Dexterity, 16 plus, but dexterity should be your highest ability, right? And if you're going to use the dice roll option and you get an 18, that means your dexterity is going to be 20 to begin with, which means that you can, rather than at levels 4 and 8, rather than taking ability point increases, you might take skills feats instead, right? So be aware of that. But I'm saying dexterity of at least 16, but the higher the better. Constitution, I'm saying 14 or above is what I would recommend. Intelligence should be at least 10. Wisdom is actually considered to be one of your primary attributes, as it says here. I'm saying 14 or above, same with your Constitution. Ideally, the higher that is, the better your ability to cast your Ranger spells, but you don't get a lot of them, and you are relying on one only, really. And if you've seen my other video, you already know what that is, but I'll explain that in a minute. So you don't need to go overboard with the Wisdom. As long as it's 14 or higher, you should be good. Charisma should be at least 10. So I'm going to re-roll those. Oh, that's almost perfect. But no, because I really want nothing below 10. Oh, why do you do that to me? Okay, so that's good. I like that roll. That's better than it needs to be. So if we take dexterity of 17, that gives us 19. And we will take, why not? We'll put wisdom of 17, charisma of 14, and then we'll go charisma 13, strength 12, intelligence 11. So we're going to get a little bit of strength. It's not going to help us at all as far as damage, because we're going to be using dex-based damage, whether we're using weapons, melee weapons or ranged weapons. So that's really only carrying capacity that's going to do for us. 15 in our Constitution gives us a couple of extra hit points, so we start with 12 rather than 10. That's nice. The intelligence bonus is only really going to help us with skills, and we're not going to pick any intelligence-based skills. You could. Wisdom, the main advantage there is going to be our spellcasting, but also it's going to help us with those wisdom-based skills that we're going to get. And charisma, not really important, but that is going to help us with our charisma-based skills if we choose to use them. But as I said, we needed 10 plus on strength, 16 plus on dex, but make that your highest. 14 plus on Constitution, 10 plus on intelligence, 14 plus on 17 on wisdom, and 10 plus on charisma. So we have to choose proficiencies now. My recommendation for this build, we have 3 skills that we can pick. I'm recommending taking stealth and then going through the wisdom ones, because that's where our next highest attribute is. I'm going to recommend survival and perception. Okay, so the stealth is going to help us, obviously, when we want to go around in stealth. The whole party goes in stealth, which is nice. We're going to be really good at it. It's going to help us to make attacks when we're undetected and things like that. We're not a thief, though, and not a rogue. We can't hide in battle and then attack and get bonuses and stuff like that, but it's still going to be useful. Perception is going to let us detect traps and all those sorts of things around us, and having that plus our high bonus in that, plus our high wisdom is going to really help us, be aware of everything that's going on. You want your ranger to be your point. You want him to be finding all this trouble. And then survival is going to help us just generally moving around in the wilderness, help us to be sure that we can hunt enough game as we're moving to keep us well done with food and all that type of stuff. So that's going to work really, really well. Now we get to pick 2 extra languages. And really, for SOLASTA, I've said before that as long as you have a diverse party, you should never, ever have to pick Dwarvish, Elvish, or Halfling, okay? Because those languages can be picked up by having a dwarf in your party, an elf in your party, and a halfling in your party, right? And everybody gets common. You can get giant, you can get goblin, you can get orcish. But so far in the early access content, you fight a few goblins and that's it. None of those rest of those languages help you. The 2 languages that will help you are Terran and Old Tirmarian. Okay? So take them. Be sure that you have at least one person in your party that knows both of those. And we have the ability to take them now, so take them. If you're not playing the early access content, you might want to pick different things because there might be different, there might be giants, there might be orcs, there might be goblins. But also, you might want to pick slightly different skills as well. I mean, that's all up to you. If there's new modules that come out, which I certainly hope there will be for this game, then there may be different languages that you want to pick. Okay, identity makes absolutely no difference for this build at all, so we're going to just not change a thing there. I'm going to do one thing before I go and do the rest of the build, and that is just come in here and select the longbow as my weapon, because that then follows over as I do this build, and we can see... Oops, almost did the wrong thing there. We can see the character and how much damage he's going to do with his bow as we go. So, starting at level 1, we have a +6 to hit with our bow, and we do 1d8 plus 4 of damage, which means we do 5 to 12 points of damage with our bow. Okay, so that's really good. If our dex was 20, that would be +7 and 6 to 13 points of damage. So, that's going to be the maximum we're going to get out of that, although proficiency bonuses and things like that will push that up. That's fine. At level 2, we get to choose our fighting style, and we get the first of our spells. So let's do that. No change here. We definitely want the archery fighting style, which is going to give us a +2 bonus to attack with our bow. So that's going to make that +8, which none of the other fighting styles really give you a bonus to hit. They only give you a bonus to damage. So that's going to make you really good. Okay? Now, we get to pick spells. What I always say about ranger spells is they're very secondary, and most of these are spells that other people can get as well. The 2 exceptions that the others can't get is Goodberry, which if they bring druids into the game, they will be able to get that, and Hunter's Mark. Hunter's Mark is what makes this build possible. When you have Hunter's Mark, you cast it on an opponent, right? And it allows you to do an extra 1d6 of damage against that opponent. Now, the strategy for that, it is a bonus action to cast that spell, okay? So, at the start of combat, in your first round, you want to cast Hunter's Mark as a bonus action, as the very first thing that you do. You don't have to use your bonus action at the end of your round. You can use it at the start. So cast Hunter's Mark on your opponent with your bonus action straight away, and then shoot at them with your bow, which is a normal action, okay? If you want to move after that, you can still move. Everything's fine, okay? But because you've got Hunter's Mark on them, your bow will straight away start doing additional 1d6 of damage. Now, be aware, this is not limited to your bow. So if you need to move in close and switch to melee weapons, do so, and you will still be able to keep the Hunter's Mark on them. Now, it requires concentration. So if you get hit and take damage, you have to roll a Constitution saving throw, to see if you can keep that concentration going. If you succeed, then you can keep the Hunter's Mark on them. If you fail, the Hunter's Mark goes away. Okay? Now, if you kill the opponent while Hunter's Mark was still on it, then you can reapply the Hunter's Mark to another opponent as another bonus action. So again, do that at the start of your round, your next round, and apply that to the opponent and shoot them. Having said that, if you shoot and kill an opponent and it's still your round and you've got the bonus action, then take it and apply it that round. It's going to help. But that's the philosophy behind Hunter's Mark. So you definitely want Hunter's Mark. It's the first spell you should take. It is the spell that you're going to need. The second spell I'm going to take is Cure Wounds. Now, the reason for this is because we have the Herbalism skill, and that will allow us to start making healing potions straight away. Okay? So, the only other spell that's really useful is Fog Cloud. Goodberry is nice. It allows you to basically heal 10 hit points by creating these berries and then using them. But it's a toss-up, really. Fog Cloud is the only other one that I would consider taking, although other spellcasters can get that. And it does require concentration as well. So if you're using Fog Cloud, you can't be concentrating on Hunter's Mark at the same time. So be aware of that. So that's level 2. Level 3, we get to choose our archetype. And this is where we're going to make another change from the previous one. So previously, we took the hunters, the marksman archetype. And what that allowed us to do was take, well, we got proficiencies with a herbalism kit or a poisonous kit, which we've already got now, so we don't need that. You could take the poisonous kit, whatever. But what this gave you was the reaction shot, which allowed you to take an attack at an opponent that if the opponent is 2 or more cells from you and they attack you with a ranged weapon or a spell, you can get a reaction shot to shoot back at them before they cast the spell or shoot at you. Okay? Very useful, but extremely situational. And when I did a playthrough with an entire party of archers and 2 of them were marksmen and they had this ability, they rarely used it because they weren't being targeted as much as the frontline melee fighters were. So I'm going to say the second major change that I had planned for this build, but I think it's like the 3rd or 4th change now, is taking the hunter archetype, which gives you, a bunch of options here. You can go as a horde breaker, which basically gives you the cleave feat. If you've played some other games that have cleave, that's what horde breaker does. If you kill an opponent and there's one right next to you, you can attack them. Doesn't work with the bow, or I don't believe it will. Giant killer gives you an ability to use a reaction shot against a large or larger creature that is within 1 cell of you if they miss with an attack. Again, not going to help you with ranged. When you switch to melee, that's fine, but it won't help you with ranged. Colossus Slayer, though, does. And what it says is, doesn't matter the size of the creature at all, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, they take an extra 1d8 of damage if it is below its hit point maximum. And you can do that once per turn. So, as long as they've been injured in some way, you can do an extra 1d8 of damage. Absolutely brilliant ability. Gives you an extra 1d8 of damage every round on opponents who are already injured. It works really good. There are some bugs in early access where combinations of Hunter's Mark and Colossus Slayer don't always mesh properly, and it doesn't always apply that ability, but when it does, it's great. It's wonderful. We get another spell as well, I'm going to recommend... Actually, I'm going to recommend Goodberry. I was going to recommend Fog Cloud, but we'll recommend Goodberry just so that we've got that extra healing stuff, because there are others that can do Fog Cloud, and the fact that it requires concentration will mean that you can't keep your Hunter's Mark on an opponent. So with having just one spell that requires concentration is easier to manage. Level 4. Now, we could take bonus feats here, and I'll talk about bonus feats in a minute, but we're going to take the ability score first. And what you want to do is you want to get your dexterity up to 20. Now, in this case, it's already at 20 with 1 point, so I've got one more point I can spend. I could put it into wisdom to get that to +4, but I'm actually going to bump the constitution up to 16, giving me +3, which will give me more hit points. Okay, so we jump from 36 to 40 hit points. So that's a good option there. But just do whatever you need to do whenever you get these ability points to get your dexterity to 20. It can't go any higher than that, barring magical intervention. So aim at that and you're doing good. Level 5. So this is the big increase here, because we get our proficiency bonus, which was +2, is now +3. So, and we get an extra attack per round. So we get 2 attacks with our bow now, and we're doing +10 to hit, and we're doing 1d8 +5 damage. But then remember, if we've got Hunter's Mark going and we've got Colossus Slayer going, that's an extra 1d6 from the Hunter's Mark, and once per round, so not on both those attacks, but on one of those attacks, an extra 1d8 of damage. Assuming that the opponent is already damaged. So the advantage here is that once you've got Hunter's Mark on the target, if you do your first attack in the round and it hits with Hunter's Mark and does a little bit of damage, it'll do 1d8 +5 plus 1d6. You can then do your second attack, which will do 1d8 +5 plus 1d6 plus 1d8. I know, insane. Assuming it hits, of course. So that will work really well. We do get another spell. We start to get the second level spells now. So really briefly, Bark Skin is no use to you, only an ally. And the reason it's no use to you is because you already have an armor class of 16. So if you cast this on yourself, it's going to do nothing. Again, it's also a concentration spell, so you have to concentrate to maintain that protection on somebody else. Darkvision, you don't need it. You already have Darkvision as a Marsh Halfling. So you could give it to somebody else, but it doesn't help you at all. Find Traps is useful, but it's an instant spell. It doesn't last for any duration. So you've got to walk into an area and be pretty sure there's going to be a trap in that area and then cast it. And if you don't find a trap, you've just wasted that spell. All right? So I don't really recommend that one. Lesser Restoration is a nice thing. It removes a detrimental condition from an ally, but clerics can do that better. Pass Without a Trace is useful for you and up to 5 allies to be stealthy for an hour, so that is useful. And Protection from Poison cures and protects against poison. The protection from poison lasts for an hour, and it also cures any poison that the characters already have. I'm going to recommend taking that at this level, and we'll move on. Now, be aware, that is as far as you will get in the early access content, level 5. You can't get any higher than that. So that's what you would be at. You would have about 49 hit points in this case. Armor class of 16, barring any magical armor. +5 to your initiative. You can move 5 cells. +3 proficiency bonus. You're doing +10 to hit. 1d8 +5 damage. 2 attacks per round. Hunter's Mark increasing the damage by 1d6. Colossus Slayer potentially increasing that by another 1d8 if the opponent is injured. Really good. But we'll continue with the build because we can... we'll go up to level 10. So at level 6, we get to pick another favorite enemy and another natural explorer terrain. really, I don't know what else to pick in the favorite enemies because, as I said, in the early access content, there doesn't appear to be anything else that fits on any other opponent types that you really come across. So I'm going to recommend taking Monstrosity, which is a bit of a catch-all and is supposed to cover things that aren't already categorized, but I think it needs the humanoid option. And if you see humanoids in this list, which should be between G and M, take that if it's eventually added. But at the moment, it doesn't exist there, so take Monstrosity. Natural Explorer, take another one. I would recommend at this point taking Forest. But again, it's not clear what some of the terrains actually are. You spend most of your time sort of in dungeons or in like buildings and stuff like that. So that doesn't match any of the terrain types. Level 7 then. We just get one more spell. I'm going to recommend Pass Without a Trace to help you be more stealthy, or the entire party be more stealthy, which is really nice. And then at level 8, we get to take either an ability score or a bonus feat. So the bonus feat that fits this build the most is Sylvan Archer. So we're going to take that. There are other ones that are useful. These ones with the exclamation marks on them are not as useful because you've already got something that's in them. So in this case, this one would increase your strength by 1 and you would become proficient with strength saving throws. You're already proficient with strength saving throws, so that doesn't help you. This one, you get a proficiency with dex saving throws. You already have that. And Manipulator, you don't have the charisma high enough, I think, for that one is the problem. No, you do. So, oh, you've already got proficiency in Persuasion. No. Yes, from the Philosopher background, you have proficiency in Persuasion. So that's the reason why you might not want to take that one. The ones that are really good are Enduring Body, which gives you an increase in Constitution by 1, but then also increases your hit points by +1 for every level, retroactive and in the future. So you get an extra hit point per level. Hard to Kill is a nice one that when you do get knocked down, it makes it easier for you. If you do successfully stabilize, you actually regain a hit point immediately, or 1 hit dice immediately, and then you can regain 2 hit dice if it's a critical roll that you've done. The Robust is useful. Basically what it's doing is not only giving you +1 to Constitution, but whenever you finish a short rest and you want to use your ability to regain hit points, you can roll 2 dice and take the higher value. So you just basically recover more hit points from taking short rests than you normally would, which is nice. And the other one, which is a little bit different but would work well, is Flawless Concentration. That would help you maintain your concentration for your Hunter's Mark. Okay? But the one that you really want is the Sylvan Archer. So this increases your dexterity by 1, which is no good for us because our dex is already at max. But it also allows you to ignore half and 3/4 cover while shooting with a bow. So in fact, what we probably should have done is at level 4, when we could take our first ability point increase, we should have just taken Sylvan Archer, which got us from 19 to 20, and that would have covered everything. And then we could have taken a different one, a different feat at this level. But Sylvan Archer is the one you want because it allows you to ignore anything but full cover when shooting a bow at an opponent. Now, there's not a lot of places in the game where they have cover that they can use to protect themselves, particularly later in the early access content, but it is still useful, so take it. Level 9, almost there. We get another spell at this point. You get 3rd level spells. There's only a couple of them. Daylight, you can already see in the dark, but lighting up an opponent at a distance is something that is useful in this game. So that one certainly is useful. Protection from energy is also useful. I'm going to say take daylight at this point because it's going to help you shoot at an opponent in the distance. And that's pretty hard to do in the dark, which it is most of the time in this game. So take that. And then level 10, we get one more level of Natural Explorer, and I'm going to recommend out of all of these, take Grassland at this point. But all of that will depend on what extra content they bring out in early access. Okay, so there we are. That is our best Archery Ranger build for SOLASTA Crown of the Magister early access. At level 10, we have 94 hit points. We have, well, it actually did give us a +1 to dexterity, which it shouldn't have. So that's a bug. But we have a +5 to our dexterity, +10 to hit, 1d8 +5 damage, 2 attacks per round. Colossus Slayer giving us an extra 1d8 if they're damaged. Hunter's Mark, if you've cast it, will then give an extra 1d6 on top of that. And as I said, if you need to, swap to your weapons and go to town with short swords, or the other option would be a pair of scimitars to do slashing damage, which is just a little bit different than the piercing damage, just so that you're not always doing piercing, because there might be some opponents that are invulnerable to piercing or have some sort of buff, some sort of protection so that they lose piercing damage. But anyway, that's the Marsh Halfling Best Archery Ranger build for SOLASTA. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, keep an eye out for the next lot. Leave a comment down below, and I will see you for the next video. Thanks a lot. Bye.